Thank you everyone for tuning in here. We're going to let some folks kind of roll in as we get to the top of the hour. So sit tight for a couple minutes until 2 o'clock. All right, we are at the top of the hour. First, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about deploying the HOBOnet remote water level monitoring system. Ultimately, this is really a training and a guide on the start to finish process of this type of equipment. So I appreciate you joining, and hopefully there's some great information and tips for you guys when you're out in the field setting up your water level, your HOBOnet system. So just to brief on who we are Hobo data loggers. We make the name itself, Hobo data loggers, pretty infamous in the industry. Our real focus is to provide accurate and reliable solutions for long-term monitoring, and that's for a number of different environmental measurements. We have a facility right in Bourne, Massachusetts. That's where we manufacture everything. And last April, we were actually acquired by a company called Lycor. They're a leader in greenhouse gas monitoring space. So a lot of great things to come with these two brands and some unique applications as well. Together, both of our companies have over 50 years of experience in this environmental monitoring space, with more to come. And we're both a world leader in data loggers with a global network of distribution as well. And as a manufacturer, we are ISO certified. A little bit about myself. My name's Andrew Thompson. I'm a sales manager here with Hobo. I've been with Hobo Data Loggers for just over 5 years now. And a big focus of mine during that time has been on water resource management. So I've been fortunate enough to be out in the field, deploying the equipment, understanding our customers' needs. And so, that's a lot of what this webinar is today, is kind of sharing some of that guidance that I've developed over the years with our customers. Some webinar details. The webinar is going to run for about 60 minutes. We will try to save some time at the end for questions. I'll be honest, I think we may not have enough time for questions at the end, just with the amount of slides I have and the detail that I want to go into. However, if you have any questions, I have my colleague Brett Stebbins on the line here. Brett has also been in the industry for over 20 years with data logging and really water level equipment. So feel free to put your questions right in the questions box or the panel, and he'll be able to answer those as we go, or we'll make note of them and answer them after the webinar. Also, this is being recorded, so following the webinar, you will get a link to that recording. A lot of my slides, you'll see there's a lot of detail in them. That's on purpose, just because as you're watching the recording later, it is more for training purposes, so that you can have some detailed steps. For the agenda today, we'll just briefly talk about HOBOnet, why HOBOnet, and really how you begin, how you get to a project site that you want to use this equipment on. But then we'll really dive into unboxing your equipment, setting your system up through Lycor Cloud and registering your station, connecting your equipment to that station, some of the troubleshooting tips to look out for, And then sensor setup, so setting up your different water level sensors right through Lightcore Cloud. Any site prep you can do, tools that you will need on site, and then we'll look at installation of the actual equipment, and we'll finish with post deployment Lightcore Cloud features. So prior to deploying, you're going to set your system up one way, and then post deployment, there's some unique things that you can do to ensure success going forward. So just a little bit about HOBOnet water level and really the HOBOnet wireless system in general. So with the power of sub-gigahertz wireless mesh technology, radio technology, we're able to take a site that has multiple points or multiple measurements needed and do real-time monitoring affordably. And the way we do that is by utilizing this radio communication between different monitoring points to kind of find their way back to a central hub or a central cellular station that will push that data up to the cloud. And so the big draw there and how we make it so affordable is you don't have to buy a cellular station for each individual monitoring point, and you don't have to pay a cellular fee for each individual monitoring point. It's really for that central hub. So it allows you to scale those networks and really scale those networks with a variety of HOBOnet sensors that we carry. We don't just carry water level. We have a ton of climate options, soil options, and water parameters. This will give you all that real-time insight and everything that comes along with our Lightcore cloud-based software. So with Lightcore Cloud, it's a very user-friendly cloud platform that allows you to kind of focus on real-time information, dashboards, alerts, and we'll go through some of all those things because we're actually going to talk about how you set them up in this presentation. So kind of how do you get to setting up one of these sites? The first thing you need to do when you're talking about a project and talking about data logging and monitoring on these sites is really identifying your boundary. Using radio communication, there's distance limitations. So ultimately, you can see in this picture over here on the right-hand side, there's a station, a centralized station, which actually, let me pull up my laser pointer if I can. So there's a centralized station right here, and out of that station, you can go up to 2,000 feet line of sight to a sensor, and then you can hop up to 5 times. So you can go 2,000 feet, another 2,000 feet off of that, another 2,000 off of that, and they will mesh through each other back to that central hub. Now, every site isn't line of sight. It's not a wide open space. There's elevation changes, there's vegetation that you need to worry about. And so in those circumstances where you're not doing a wide open wetland, or you're restoring a wetland and it's an old ag site, there's many different areas where maybe you're doing baseline monitoring. I highly suggest to take your boundary, put those points on a map, whether you're using Google Earth or a different software, drop those pins for your different well measurements or areas that you want to measure, make a KML file of it and talk to us about it. We're specialists in kind of understanding those different areas or different disturbances that can kind of block some of that distance. Maybe going through pine trees, you only get max 500 feet. It really all depends on your site and how much is there, and we'll talk about that together. My contact information was there. Brett Stebbins will also put his contact information in. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you to design out your site. One of the things you want to consider is, you could build a station. Maybe you're just doing one groundwater well today, but there's potential to expand down the line. You want to build a system that you can expand off of, and that's what this HOBOnet system does. You buy your station that allows for wireless sensors, and then you can add as many sensors as you want down the line to connect up to that mesh network. There's a bunch of measurements here that you can also consider. So a lot of my customers that are using water level, they want to also add a wireless rain gauge to their network so that they can see how the rainfall has impacted their hydrology measurements. We have all these different climate sensors, temp RH, solar radiation. We have a whole line of soil moisture sensors that are built into this network. And then we even just recently came out with a analog mode, which will allow for even third-party sensor integration. So if there's something that we don't have, that's an option to kind of take it in. And all of these moats and options can tie right into this network and essentially utilize each other as repeaters, which we also sell a low-cost repeater if needed. So just a little bit about the pricing, just so you can get an idea of how to kind of build these out. Ultimately, you start with your micro RX station, which is your cellular base station. It comes with that radio receiver attached to it. This is about $1,000 station. Then it comes, or you purchase a cell plan with it. That station is going to come with a SIM card already installed. So pretty much that annual cell plan is kind of paying for your data storage and cellular SIM card. We have plans that range between $99 and $399, and that's just based on how many wireless sensor setups you have. So if you're going to use 50 wireless water level sensors on a single property, you're only paying $399 per year one time. You're not paying for each individual well, you're paying for a single station. If you only have one or two, you can actually, it's just a $99 fee per year, and there's no additional cost to our cloud software. It's just strictly that SIM card and the data storage. Once your RX station, once you have that here, really it comes down to the three components of the HOBOnet water level setup. So you have your moat, your cable, and your transducer. And together, if you're just using maybe a 5 meter standard cable, you're looking at around $850 for a full water level setup. It has barometric pressure built into the moat already, so you're getting actual water level data. So anytime you develop a site, let's just say you start with one like this, to add another well or another location monitoring point, it'd be $850 for another water level well, and you wouldn't be paying an annual fee for that. So that's a kind of gist of the HOBOnet system. Now I'm going to really start to get into the components of this and talk about kind of deployment stuff. So first and foremost, you buy your equipment and you're unboxing your system. What are you going to get? So the first item is going to be your station, right? So the station that does, we have a bunch of variations of the RX 2100. The RX 2106 900 is our wireless system, the one that can handle these wireless sensors. And so you're going to buy your RX 2106 or an RX 3000. We have another station that can do this as well, but in most cases, the 2106 does well. And so you're going to buy this station. It comes with this radio receiver that's attached to it. That's what all those moats or the wireless setups are going to talk to. There's a SIM card installed. It's a multi-carrier SIM. It has a rechargeable battery pack right here that's user replaceable. And then there's a solar panel on the front that will recharge that battery pack, and those will last about 5+ years, the battery pack itself. We also, on this station, not only can it do up to 50 wireless sensors, it also has these 5 plug-and-play smart sensor options for a number of our different climate sensors like rainfall, wind speed, direction. You could ultimately design this as a full weather station and also do wireless sensors from this module. In the box, so you're going to have your station, you have your mounting supplies for your station. This is good. You can mount it on a 4x4 post. We also have U-clamps that you can purchase to put them around a galvanized pipe. And then you have your bracket for your moat. So your moat's usually going to sit up above. This is usually in reaching distance. This one's up above on a post, and you're going to mount that right to your bracket right here, which comes with screws and everything to pop it in place. It also comes with grease or lube so that you can lube the channel right here, this channel grommet, and make sure that it's weatherproof. A lot of our customers that are doing, HOBOnet water level or water level deployments are utilizing 2-inch wells. It's a pretty standard size for wells. Not all of them are like that, but if you are, I highly suggest utilizing our well cap, our 2-inch well cap with the HOBOnet system. It's a locking well cap. It suspends the cable properly, and you have flexibility with that as well. And it also has, a great setup here with this disc where nothing's going to fall in. It's not going to stretch over time. And you have a nice little slot here to drop your water level meter in with, a sounder. You can drop it right through that slot, and you don't ever have to remove anything from the well. So this is a great item if you are dealing with 2-inch wells. And in that box, you get your well cap, your disc, your bolts that connect your disc together after you kind of figure out what cable length you want. One thing I will mention, if you're going out to a site and you have your well cap and you haven't opened it yet, and you pop it on one of those wells, I've seen customers, that disc and bolt are inside here in that assembly. I've seen them put that well cap on, open it up, and drop them down the well and go fishing. So pull that out before you actually install the well cap. Now to talk about the actual HOBOnet water level setup. So we have 3 components here. You have your moat. This is kind of the radio communication piece of it. This is the data logger as well. It stores, up to 1 million measurements. And then it also has barometric pressure built into it. There's a 6-foot sensor cable attached to it with an adapter. And that adapter is going to tie into your custom direct read cable. That's custom because it needs to fit a number of different applications, maybe a shallow well, maybe a deep groundwater well. So that's a custom size and fit for your needs. And then we also have our pressure transducers that come in different ranges, 13 foot, 30 foot, 100, again, depending, and also in titanium or stainless, and depending on your application. This moat has 2 AA rechargeable batteries in it. Those should last 5+ years in the right conditions. And it has a little solar panel. This is a very small unit, about the size of a cell phone. That battery life holds up really well. I have a note here about not putting batteries in your moat until instructed by the quick start guide. I'll say it again because all of these components should be connected, ready to go before we ever touch batteries. And then it also comes with a little mounting bracket, which I'll show you in the next slide, some of this packaged material. So your entire or all your components for those wireless water level sensors are right here, and this is how they come. Your custom cable length, if it's a smaller cable length, it's going to come in a bag just like this. If it's a large cable length, it's going to come on a spool. You have your moat box, which has the moat cable and adapter attached, along with your bracket that you're going to mount that moat with. You have your transducer box right here, and then if you get a well cap, it comes looking like that. You can kind of see how these 3 components lay out here, and then how they also connect. So this is just a little understanding of the components needed to kind of get to this point, which is really a water level setup at a well or a location. So once you have your items and unboxed and kind of laid out, which I like to do at the office, we'll talk about that in a moment, but I don't like doing that on site. It's a lot easier to do in the office. And because this equipment is so, small in size, it's easy to put together in the office and carry it out that way and drop it in place in your site. So the first step with your equipment after unboxing it is to create your account in Lightcore Cloud. So what you'll do is you'll type lightcore.cloud into a web browser if you don't already have a system in place. And if you're a new user, you're going to register an account. So you can see over here, there's a register an account option in the very beginning. And you'll do that setup process right there. If you're an existing user and you're already maybe tied to an account, or you already have a system set up in an organization created, under your login on the top right are your initials. You can click that and just create a new organization. So that's an option to kind of, maybe make a new site. If you're a consulting firm, you have multiple sites, this is where you can just create a new organization. If you would like to add this station to an existing account, so you don't want a new organization, you just want it going on, the same account that you're already managing, all you have to do is under the devices tab, register that station. And so one of the things that you want to think about is, again, down the line, you want to avoid moving stations to new organization or to organizations created later, just because, everything kind of lives there, all the data, everything. So you want to think about the future in the long term here before you move forward. So questions to ask yourself are, are you going to have future sites, right? And, who do you want to share this account with? If you're, a firm and you have multiple clients and multiple organizations, are you going to be adding different people to each organization with credentials into the cloud software? So you kind of want to figure out how you're going to set it up, and it can always be changed later, but you want to take these necessary steps in the beginning. One thing that we do offer now as well is a shared network option. So not only can you have a bunch of organizations, but you can also tie all those organizations to a shared network so that maybe there's a master user or client that wants to see all of their sites, but they don't need to be tied to everything. You can do that through shared network options. So once your system or once your account's set up, however you've done that, you are going to register your station. So this is the process of registering your station. Under the devices tab in Lightcore Cloud over on the left-hand side, it says register an RX device. And so what you're going to do is right here in this section, it doesn't have it on this one, but in this section of your station, there is a serial number and device key. That's the first thing that you're going to put in the first step. The next step is your coupon code. So when you purchase a station and you purchase a cell plan, following that, you'll get an order confirmation with a coupon code. If that went to the wrong contact or maybe someone in accounting, just reach out to customer service right here. They can provide you with that coupon code so that you can utilize it for this step. Make sure you have it before you start. And then after that, you enter the coupon code, it finds it. It will ask you to connect your station to the cloud. So here's the little cloud button right here on the station. You'll press that. I actually did forget to mention your power cable is right here. So you want to fire that station up before you ever start right here. There's a power that you'll plug in. The station will fire up so that it's on. So connect your station to the cloud. You press that cloud button right here. It'll make a connection. Lightcore Cloud will recognize it, and then you'll move on to the next step, which is really general configuration. So these are important steps. They can be changed later, but they're important steps because more of the HOBOnet, this specific product line and deployment stuff. So in the beginning, you're just naming it. You know, what do you want to name the station? Is it a site location, your time zone, your units? Are you using US or metric? But the things that are important are, you know, connection interval and logging interval. And the reason I say that is because although you may not want water level data every 5 minutes and pushing to the cloud every 10 minutes, in the very beginning when you're setting up a wireless system or a wireless network, the fastest logging rate and the fastest upload time is going to help you see those changes while you're on site. So as you're dropping water level sensors in place, it's constantly trying to update and find the nearest sensor to create that mesh network. If you go and have 1 hour logging and 2 hour upload times, it's going to take a lot longer to see those changes while you're on site. The next process after your logging intervals is your alarms. One thing I'll say here, you can add your email and phone number for your system alarms. That's all I care about right now is system alarms because, you know, if the station misses connection or batteries going, you know, failing while we're waiting to deploy or something fails, you can add an email or phone number to get that alert. As far as missed connections, it starts with a, you know, send me an email every time we miss a cell connection for 10 minutes. I usually change that to 4 hours just because cell can drop for a short period of time, but after 4 hours, that's when I really, you know, might care about it. And I don't want an alert every time it happens. So now prepping your HOBOnet sensor. So now your station's configured, it's in the system, you can see it in Lightcore Cloud. Now we want to prep our HOBOnet sensors so that we can wirelessly tie them to that system. So again, I'll mention this, it's best to do this in the office. Bringing all this equipment to a site and doing it in the elements is not ideal, and it is typically pretty small and compact that you can do it right in the office on a desk. You lay everything out. So one thing I'll say is when you pull the equipment out of the moat box and the cable bags, or even the spool that you have all your cable on, keep those, because I typically, once I'm done and pull batteries out of this and prepare it for the site next day or next week, I put them right back in that box or bag and keep them all together as one single unit. At this point, we do not want to put batteries in yet. You'll see right here, there's actually a toe tag. So when you open up this moat, right where the battery is, it's a toe tag that tells you don't put batteries in until pretty much all of these items are connected. So you have your cable, your direct read cable, your pressure transducer, and your moat. You want to connect all those first. If you put batteries in before they're connected, it's not going to recognize the sensor and provide you the right readings, and it'll show you an error. So you want to do that after the fact. If you're using large cable and it's on a spool, I like to just expose both ends of that spool and connect the transducer and the mode adapter right here. And even when I'm packaging it up, I actually might just put a screw. There's a little spot on the top of this moat. I might even just mount it right to the spool. Make sure you don't screw into the cable, but I like to mount it right to the spool so that I can, again, bring it as a package unit. If your site has multiple stations, at this point in time, we kind of want to designate what modes are going to go to what station. If you're going to have 3 stations on a single site because it's just a large site and each one has 10 modes going to it, we want to start separating them out. And I really like to do one station at a time before I kind of add all my stations and try to do it. You don't want to tie moats to a station while another one's doing it because they might find the wrong station. When I am connecting several moats and kind of laying them out on a table, I like to do them in batches just so it's more manageable. Typically 5 to 10 moats is pretty manageable to kind of add to that station at one time. So you'll do them all like this and then line them all up on a table, open up the doors, kind of ready for batteries to be put in them. Once all those water level components are together and connected, you're ready to start that syncing process. So you can add batteries, add your AA batteries now. And I like to, again, keep the package that those batteries come in because I'm going to utilize it later. I like to add those AA batteries right to these moats. You'll see on the LCD display, so there's a little display on here. It's going to pop up with an empty signal bar and an X. At this point, though, give it a few seconds, because what it'll do is it'll flash. It might flash everything for a moment. It might not wake up right out the gate. Give it a second before you try to pull batteries or do anything, and allow it time to get to this point, which is displaying that empty signal bar and an X. If you do see a warning sign at this point with an exclamation after you've waited a few seconds, what you can do is pull the batteries out, make sure everything is connected properly. Your transducer, your cable, make sure it's all connected. Wait about 30 seconds and then put the batteries back in. Once your moats are kind of ready to roll, so they're in a process where they're ready to kind of connect to the station, they're on, the batteries are in them, they're all in good standing, we're going to start syncing them to this station. So just a little bit about this station. There's 3 buttons. Once you power it up, very user-friendly system. There's 3 buttons. There's a select button, stop and start, which is more for logging modes, whether you want to start or stop logging. And then the third one is currently in this position as a cloud button. And so the select button right here is to select through your different modules. So I mentioned that this has 5 inputs for plug and play smart sensors. So you'll see it says right here, smart sensors. Module 2 is the other option right here, and that's your wireless radio receiver or wireless system. And so when we're going to add wireless sensors, we need to hit select until we only see module 2. Once you see that, because it's really just filtering through your modules, once you see just module 2, instead of a cloud here, you're going to see a magnifying glass. And so that magnifying glass is what's going to put this station into search mode so that you can tie all the modes to it. So at that point, you'll click this button, the magnifying glass will start to go into search mode or start to flash. And then one by one, you go to each mode and there's a little red button right alongside the LCD screen. You hold that button down for 3 seconds and it will start its sync process. You'll see it kind of flash and then start its sync process. At that point, even if you think something's going wrong or something has gone wrong, don't hold the button down for 3 seconds. That's only done to sync something. You don't want to double up that process or desync it. So you can hold it for 3 seconds, and after that, just don't do it. I wouldn't do it again. The only other time you're going to press that button is really to wake up the LCD, and pressing it real quick is all you need to do. So you'll allow that to go through its process. It could take anywhere from seconds to a minute or two. And then on the LCD screen, you'll eventually see all those signal bars filled in, if not most of them filled in, and then no X at the end of it, knowing that it has been connected. This is also something that you're able to see on the cloud. You'll see them filtering in, and you'll see channels start to pop up here. If you're doing a water level sensor, it's 5 channels. It's barometric pressure, it's differential pressure, it's water level, it's temperature. So you'll actually see them start to pile in increments of 5 under channels on your station. Before I move on, so after you're done, after they've all synced to the station, you can tell by channels, and you can also tell by the LCD display. You can kind of close these modes up, and then you can stop that magnifying glass and take it out of search mode just by pressing that button. And what I like to do at that point is I want to get that cloud back up so that I can push any changes. And so I'll hit select until you see smart sensors and module 2, and that cloud reappears. Again, give it time. Sometimes it takes a moment. But once that cloud reappears, I'll press that button just to make sure any changes that haven't been pushed up have now been pushed up, and I can see everything in the Litecore cloud system. So at this point, now that everything is tied, we are going to move over to Litecore Cloud just to confirm everything. So in Litecore Cloud, if you go to the Devices tab on the left-hand side and select your station that you're currently managing, it'll give you some device summary and logs. But if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a bunch of tiles with all your different measurements, and you can just make sure that everything kind of looks good right there. The measurements look good. Also at the bottom, if you scroll down further, is your wireless sensor health option. That tells you how many sensors are connected, what their battery life is, their signal strength, and are they online. In most cases, if everything's on a table, it's going to look like this. You want to make sure here, again, if you see any errors here or any errors here on these measurements themselves, remove the batteries from that moat, make sure everything's connected well, wait about 30 seconds, pop those batteries back in, and let's see if it comes back online and shows what it needs to show that time around. Same thing with here. If something says offline, just make sure it hasn't been moved and it is online. Once you've confirmed that everything is there, all the sensors are there, we want to do some configuration and in pre-configuration prior to going out to site. I like to do as much as I possibly can before going out to site just to make it easier and more efficient when we're deploying. So once you're on that devices page and you're signed into that station, at the top right, there's a configuration icon. You're going to select that configuration, and this is what you're going to see right here for a drop down. We've already done our general configuration. We've already selected our logging interval, but what we can do here is go through each individual sensor now and label them. I like to label them prior to going out to site, and on the box, I'll actually write the well that I've tied it to. But the reason I do this is because if I label all of my sensors now and designate them to a certain well, and I already have my well map and everything's already laid out, and I can designate these to a well, I can place them all on our Google Maps feature on Litecore Cloud. And that way, as I'm on the site deploying this equipment, I'll be able to see if the network's functioning the way it needs to be, or if I need to add repeaters, or if I need to address something while I'm on site. So labeling these sensors in the beginning and putting them back in the box and writing on the box where they go to is an ideal step if you can do it. Once you have labeled the equipment, so the wireless water level sensors, once you have labeled them, if you have labeled them and you did this step right here, what you can do is you can pull the batteries right out and you can close them up, put those batteries right back in the old package, put it in your moat box or put them together so that they're ready to kind of bring out to site. We don't want them to die, over the period of time between now and when you're deploying them. So just pull those batteries out. This is just showing you how to configure those and a couple pieces to it. So if you connect or you hit the configuration on those, you'll hit the drop down on each wireless sensor that you're going to label. And there's two places to label them. Let's just say you're going to call something well 1. Your wireless sensor label is what identifies the moat itself, that whole setup. But if you go down a little bit lower, this is your water level parameter. You label that as well, and I like to label it, again, well 1 or something that identifies that well, because when you're looking at the dashboard or exports or certain areas, that doesn't just tell you serial number, it'll tell you that it also belongs to well 1, so it's a good identifier throughout the system. The enable scaling option. So right out the box, these water level sensors, the HOBOnet water level sensors, will actually provide you with a water level reading. It's telling you what is pretty much what water is above the sensor at that given time. At some point, you want to use a reference level that actually makes sense to your deployment. And so the enable scaling option is what you can utilize there to kind of create an offset and do your reference level, which I'll talk about later. And actually, one more thing, we will do this post-deployment, typically because you're going to take your field measurements while you're out there and get your reference levels. Then we'll come back post-deployment and enter that scaling in. So once you've set up your sensors, identified which ones are going to which well, if you can do that in the initial step, which is huge, Under the devices tab, so on the left-hand side of the screen again, if you click devices, over on the right, you'll see these 3 sections on really how to display your devices, either in a tile view, a list view, or a map view. The map view is your Google Maps feature. So if you click on that, it will bring up a map pretty much of the world, just like Google Maps. And it's going to allow you to kind of place these sensors on that map, which is something that is great for deployment purposes and seeing your network as you're deploying. So at the bottom of this map, I like to put it into satellite mode. There's different options, but on the bottom left, there's a little icon that you can click to change how it looks. I always have mine in satellite. So what you're going to do is you're going to locate your site. Unfortunately, you can't type it in. You are just going to have to manually scroll in and locate that site. You can hit enter edit mode at the top left of the screen. And once you do that, there's going to be a drop down, or there's going to be a station right there under the enter edit mode, and a plus button. So that plus symbol right there is going to allow you to click it and then drop your station in the location that really you expect to put it on the site. I like to put my stations somewhere that are more easily accessible, just so that I can get to them, just because they're a key piece of this entire project. However, I know you want them centrally located in most cases as well, so you try to kind of gauge that based on the site. After you've added your station, another drop down appears that you can select your wireless sensors and also drop those in place. And again, if you have your well layout, you know where they're going, and you can put them in a general spot. This is more to identify network health while you're out there. Then drop all of those wireless sensors in those spots so that you can utilize this this system while you're out there. Once you're done with your map, now it's kind of time to put everything away. You might have already put away the wireless water level sensors and taken batteries out, but we also want to pack away that station. So what you can do here is we want to, number one, make it weatherproof. So there's a channel grommet at the bottom of this with a bunch of plugs hanging down. Usually, so what you'll do is you'll take that grease packet. I like to swipe it across the channel grommet. And then I use needle nose pliers. I just think it's a lot easier to grab onto it and pop those through. The minute you get grease on your fingers, it's tough to do the remainder. So I like needle nose pliers. I'll grab onto the end of it and pop them through, and make sure that that's all kind of weatherproof. If you're going to deploy the following day, technically you can just leave your station powered on. It should be fine. If you want to put it next to a window just to catch some sunlight because it has that solar panel, you can do that. If you're going to deploy it in a couple of weeks, I'd probably pull the power from it, or leave it outside. Excuse me. So that power cable is right there. You can pull that, or you can leave it and put it outside. I just prefer to pull it out. Everything, when you fire it back up, will recognize itself and be just the way you left it, essentially. I mentioned pulling the modes from the wireless batteries, but as you can see here, I put them right back in this box if I'm doing shallow wells or have small cables, and identify each well that I'm putting them to. You have your serial number right here. You can cross-reference everything. There's a lot of things that you can do prior to going out to site, to really prep for the install. Make sure that you're doing everything efficiently. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the mounting equipment and tools that you can have on hand that I find are just very standard when you're setting up one of these wireless systems. Ultimately, the wireless mode itself, really should be positioned on some sort of pole about 6 feet more or greater. Because ground interference is the biggest interference for radio communication. So you want to get those motes up about 6 feet high. And so here's some equipment that you can mount your station, but also mount your wireless water level setup. So some heavy duty 6-foot U posts or T post. You can see over here, that's going to be good for the wells and or the wireless water level setups and the station. I use one of these U posts for a moat just because it's not as heavy. It doesn't need too much stability there. And then I use 2 of them for the station just because I use bigger PVC and make sure that that is a really sturdy setup out there. With the moat setup, I typically have 1-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe. 6 to 10 foot sections is good. I like 10-foot sections. It's just, again, you're going to get your best transmission or radio transmission if you're higher. So that's what you're going to use to mount your moat to, and you're going to strap that right to a U-post with maybe hose clamps You can use zip ties to make sure they're good ones. Same thing with the station, except 2-inch pipe, just because it's a little bit heavier. You want to make sure it's secure. And again, 10-foot section, I'll mount my station about 6 feet off the ground, or 5 feet. I'm shorter than 6 feet, so 5 feet off the ground so I can access it. And then the moat itself, or the radio receiver, up above around the 10-foot height. In this case, I'll use 2 U-posts, so I'll kind of slam them both in the ground and put the PVC in between them with hose clamps. Your stations and moats, you could also mount them on a galvanized post that you drive into the ground. A tripod, we sell both of those things if that's a good option for you. It's definitely a pretty secure option if you want to go that route and make sure it's a sturdy deployment. And then if you're using zip ties, which you're going to use zip ties for cable management, use UV resistant ones. They don't last long. If not, we also sell those as well. And then recently we've added split conduit to our line. Also, just because you can get rodents out on some of these sites, and any exposed cable is exposed to those rodents. So if you use some split conduit, the reason we say split is because the ends of that transducer is 1 inch. And so you'd have to use 1 1/4 plus PVC conduit to run that transducer through and get that cable protection. But if you use split conduit, you can just feed the cable in through it. Here's some tools that are handy to have, and in almost most cases necessary. You're going to want a post driver if you are using U-posts and you need to slam those in the ground. A small Phillips head for the moat bracket and the well cap. So it's kind of unique, but it is definitely necessary. You're not going to use a drill on this. It's just a smaller Phillips head will really help with doing that. And when you're doing the well cap, trying to hold it in place, and using a small Phillips head will be good there. A cordless drill with various bits is going to be good for mounting your moat brackets to your PVC pipe, but also for hose clamps. So that's always handy. Some snips for zip ties. Tape measure. So that tape measure is kind of dual purpose. If you're measuring, your length of cable and where you're going to put the transducer, that tape measure is going to be good for that. But also a lot of deployments that are shallow wells or surface water, they might not utilize a water level meter or a sounder to get that static water level reading. They'll just use a tape measure. So that tape measure is always something you should have on hand. And then if it's necessary, if you're doing deeper groundwater wells, or you like using a sounder or a water level meter, or have one, you can bring that as well, just to get your static reading. A rubber mallet's good to have on hand if you are using our 2-inch well caps. You're gonna hit those onto your PVC pipe. That's a good option to do as well. So here are some prepping suggestions for your deployment. So one of the things that some of my customers do, I think it's a great option, is mounting our brackets to our 1-inch moat pole in the very beginning, before you even go out to site, or before you walk to a well. And a lot of these locations, you can at least drive up somewhere. I would do this on the back of your truck, or even back at the office, and take them with you this way. So you have your bracket, it comes with your 2 screws. Screwing in is always best. Again, it also comes with zip ties, but if you can screw into something, that's preferred. And then there's a smaller screw right here. Once I screw that bracket in, I put that screw and screw it right into the top portion where it's going to eventually go, just to keep it secure so that I don't lose it. And that's what kind of keeps the moat inside of that bracket. There are some tabs right here that hold it in place, but that screw is extra protection. All right, so we did that. Another thing that you can do beforehand, if you're working in an area that all has, you're going to deploy your transducers all at the same depth. And maybe they're smaller wells, or you're doing stream sites, you're going to deploy them all at the same depth. It's a 5-foot well, for example. You can actually take that well disc that comes along with your well cap, and you can attach it right to the cable where you're going to want it. So if it's a 5-foot well, maybe you attach it just below 5 feet, so that you can really bring them out there and drop in place. And that makes it really easy too, because sometimes when you're in these wetlands or stream sites, you drop a screw, we're in some trouble. So doing that prior to walking out to your location is ideal. Now, if you're doing deep groundwater wells, you can do everything right there, not a problem. You're going to lower your transducer in, and then you're going to kind of put the well disc where you want it. But it's a great option to do if you can, if you are going to go out to a site that has all the same size wells. Do realize that this well cap will add a little height to that well, so just make sure you realize that before you kind of put your cable attached to it. So now how do I deploy things, or how do I feel they should be deployed? Typically, I like to put my station out first, and kind of work my way out from there. Because this is a mesh network, if you work on the outer edges to try to work your way back into the station, it's going to take that much longer to see how the network is reacting to it. So if you put your station out and then you go to the closest ones, you'll kind of be able to tell as you're doing this process. You can pull up Lightcore Cloud, pull up that Google Maps feature and say, these ones aren't connecting. We might have to add a repeater here. And I highly suggest that if you think there's a reason you should add a repeater, add that repeater. It might save you a trip to the site next time, and also strengthen that network for future things that could grow in on that site. It's a low cost way to save a lot of money down the line. So you'll put your station there. Once you have your station, you're going to identify the wells. Let's just say there's 3 or 5 wells that you're going to be able to walk out to, or areas that you're going to be able to walk out to, and drop these in place. You're going to pull out those moats that you've identified that are going to those locations, or if you haven't identified, that's fine. Pull out 5 moats, and I like to open them up right there in the box, put the batteries in, and watch them connect to the station, just to, again, make sure it connects. It takes quicker if you're near the station. You could technically go out to the well, drop it in place, put the batteries in, and it will find its way back. But again, I like to be a little bit more efficient and also avoid some troubleshooting things in the future. So I like to do that all right at the station, and then I go bring them and drop them in place. The items to bring to the well, so you have your box with your wireless water level setups, you have your well cap if you're using it, a U-post, your PVC, hose clamps, your post driver, split conduit, zip ties, that screwdriver or drill bits, tape measure, and then snips. These are things that you can bring out to the that are going to bring out to the individual sites with you. Here's just some examples of some of these station deployments, just in how you can deploy them. So over here, you got one mounted to a post, right? This makes it pretty easy actually, because you can screw right into it. The mode is right here behind the rain gauge, which I don't love, but it's an option, and everything was kind of so close by, it didn't matter. You have another one here on a Galvy pipe. They've made a nice mounting bracket for it, so the station was mounted right to that. And then this is kind of the standard, or just an option that's easy to do. 2 U-posts, one on either side, your 2-inch PVC pipe down the middle of them. You have your station. What you're seeing here is actually split conduit around the cable, and then your moat at the top of the pipe. When it comes to deploying your wireless sensors, so now this is your water level setups. If you're doing a well or a stilling well, you want to add your cap if you're using our 2-inch cap, but you want to add your cap onto that. So again, I mentioned it in the beginning, remove this well disc before you add your cap, so that way you don't open it and drop that in, and then you're going fishing. If you are taking, so the other thing you want to do is take all your measurements. So you want to take your static reading, your water level. You want to get all these reference levels now while you're on site before you really start dropping anything in place and messing with that well. And this is also if everything's already installed, but some of the measurements that are common: top of casing or top of that well cap that you just installed to the ground, top of casing to the water. If you're using the well disc right here and it's a shallow well, what you can do is you can measure from this well disc to the end of the transducer right at this, and there's a measurement right here, right at the kind of beveled edge of your transducer. That's going to be very handy if you are doing shallow wells, because ultimately that can be used for your reference or your calculated offset. So I'll talk about that later. But these are some measurements that you can take. If you're doing deep groundwater wells, you might just run a water level meter down there. If you're doing surface water, you might measure from bottom of stream bed up, however you typically take those measurements. But now's the time before you start adding transducers to your well. So another thing, if you're not using 2-inch pipe and using our well cap, there's other ways to mount this. One thing you don't want to do is suspend this entire setup with this sensor cable right here. It is not meant to take tension. And so you have two options. You can suspend it from this adapter. There's a little eye hook there, or eye bolt, and you can run a bolt through there that fits your application. Or you can suspend it in a similar fashion as our well cap, which is with the direct read cable. The direct read cable can take tension. This sensor cable cannot. And actually, I'll show you some options of what that looks like. So with the wireless water level setups, you're gonna, first, once kind of your cap's installed, it's ready to take on that pressure transducer, you're gonna install your U or T post. One thing, if your well's already installed, a shallow groundwater well, you don't want to punch that T post through your bentonite layer. So make sure you're beyond that, but also as close as possible, just because you're gonna have some cable routed and running over to your well. The more you have, the worse off it is, just for animals that could be out on the site. So the closer the better. What you're going to do, so install that T-post, install your moat. So your bracket may already be attached to that pole. So you're going to slip that moat right into that bracket, put your little screw in it. And then at that point, while it's on the ground, while it's sitting there, I like to add my split conduit right to it. If you're using some other conduit, you can route the cable right through that as well. And then I'll also throw a zip tie right on the top at this point, because at 10 feet, I'm not reaching it. So you can snip that zip tie as well, just for cable management. As you get down, and at this point, you take your pole, raise it up, put it right on that T-post, use your hose clamps or zip ties to mount it to that T-post. And then really at that point, you're just doing cable management, opening up that well cap and dropping your transducer right in there where you want it, and kind of clean everything up. You have your moat box already at that point. If it's not labeled with a well, and you have just now identified what well this box is going to, there's a serial number on that box. Write what well it's now kind of been identified for. That way, later when you go into the software, you can utilize that labeling. Here's some setups, different setups than just kind of a standard wetland. You got a stream site. This is a good one. This is using 1 1/4 conduit. There's a nice junction box here that's, I think, suspending that adapter with a bolt, and then they're routing that cable through the conduit. Moats up here on a 2-inch PVC pipe, a lot of hose clamps and zip ties. This is a deeper groundwater well. Again, inside this post, they are mounting, I think there's a little hook that's actually suspending the adapter. You have your moat up here, and then this is a stream site. This is probably, perforated pipe up along this. They have run down the cable right into that well and suspended it at the bottom. The sensor's probably sitting right about here. They don't even need to do a reference level. It's already taking water level from the bottom of the stream. When you are deploying your wireless sensors, so everything's either out there or in the middle of being out there, you can check all this on Lycor Cloud. You bring it up right at the truck, in between kind of you dropping stuff out there. And I do want to say, as I kind of expected, I am going to go over. We are going to record this webinar, or it's being recorded, and we can send it out after. If you do feel that this webinar has been useful, you can stick around if you have time. If not, you can look back at some of these slides later. That's why I have a bunch of information on here. So apologies for going over, but I wanted to make sure that this was good training. So after you deploy the wireless sensors, look on Lycor Cloud, see that connection. Is it logging? Is it taking readings? Is everything connecting up? One thing that, if you're going to be on the site for multiple days, just because you're doing a lot of these wireless water level sensors, give your network time to kind of stabilize. This is a self-healing, self-mesh network. And so, it's running through all these logic pieces to find their best path back to the station. So you're going to learn about it over, a lot over a 24-hour period. So when you deploy them all, maybe you're there another day, watch that network, see how it's functioned, and then you can kind of make adjustments or add repeaters. Like I said, it's an easy, low-cost way to kind of make sure that you don't have to make another trip to the site. Couple things about the moats. They have those AA replaceable batteries that will last 5+ years. One of the things is, if you have bad connection on site, although they have internal memory and can back that up and continue to log, Low connection will also deplete your battery. And I've seen that in sites where, it's just lack of connection or bad connection. It's constantly looking for that network, and that's causing it to deplete those batteries. So a strong network is going to handle multiple things and ensure a successful deployment. So after everything's deployed and you come back to your site, now it's time to kind of jump onto Lightcore Cloud again and make some of your changes or configurations. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate and add our offset or create a reference level. If we don't care about where the water level is in reference to the transducer, we need another reference point. We're going to change that. We'll talk about labeling your sensors now, or the next step to it. Adjusting your logging intervals now that we don't need stuff moving so quickly and taking so many data points. I'll show you real quick just some dashboard creation, adding alarms to your system at this point, and then also exports, scheduled exports, and API. I won't dive in too deep to that, but just tell you some of the capabilities of it. So your post-deployment configuration, I'll say this. So you've deployed everything. Anytime you reconfigure these water level setups, you rename them, you add your offset, it's going to almost identify it as a new sensor. It does that on purpose. If you wanted to take this equipment and move it to another site, you almost want it to kind of restart and refresh. And so one thing I will say is when you are making these changes, or you're labeling it, or you're adding an offset for your reference point, do it all at the same time if you can, or in large batches, so that you're not running exports and seeing data that's corrected, data that's not corrected, trying to figure out when you did that. It's helpful to all do it at one time. So if you go back into your configuration section, there's the section on the left. It says wireless sensors logging. We're going to click on that. We had already been there prior and kind of labeled our wells, but if you have not done that, you can do it now. For example, after we kind of get our offsets and stuff, which I'll talk about in a moment. But one of the things when you select wireless sensors logging, it will say logging interval. At this point, I would change it. We know the network stable, things are coming in. I don't want a data point every 5 minutes. Some common ones are 15 minutes, 30 minutes, at least for water level, or even an hour. You can change that now so that you're not getting too much data. If you didn't label your sensors, you're going to want to label them at this point. And again, both of these sections should be labeled. And also, as you scroll down below kind of the moat, there's different sections. So the first section is your water level measurement. Then it's going to be, I think barometric pressure, and then temperature. You don't really have to touch those other measurements, temperature and barometric. That's all fine. It can be labeled the way it is. If you do, want to add a sensor label and identify those as well, you can as well, but it's not totally necessary. So the next real step is kind of doing your offset and getting an actual reference measurement. So this is going to be a couple slides talking about this, because it's a little different than how we do it with some of our other equipment in utilizing reference levels. But what we use in this case, because it's already taking a water level measurement the minute you drop that transducer in, we use what's called an offset. And it's really to kind of offset what it's reading and get it to a point or a reference point that makes sense to you. One of the things that you'll see here when you click on enable scaling, typically I do water level, scaled units feet, and then your multiplier right here really is in relation to freshwater brackish or salt. So it's a different density essentially. So these are the multipliers you should use for that, which can all be seen in the manual or quick start guide. Now an offset, again, it's going to get us to a desired reference point essentially. I mentioned in the beginning, if you are doing shallow groundwater wells, there's a lot of wetland restoration projects utilizing this equipment. If you were able to take a measurement from your, well casing to the bottom of the sensor, and you were able to do that, if you want to see ground as 0 and anything below it as a negative number, so as that water level rises and gets to ground, it shows as 0. If it's above ground, it's a positive number. If you want to see it that way, really all you need to punch in, if your transducer, this section of the transducer is -2 feet below ground surface and ground 0, your offset's -2. So that's one way to do that for shallow groundwater wells. If you're doing, you're dropping this at the bottom of a stream bed, and again, that stream bed, you want the reference point to be 0. There's nothing needed. There's no offset needed. It's going to read above that transducer anyways. Those are very specific options. And then really it comes down to there's, so many different deployments, so many different ways to reference things. You might want to use elevation. You might want to use a stream bank. There's different ways to do it, the bottom of a well casing. And so in that case, this is kind of how you come up with that corrected offset so that you can get your reference level. So what you want to do, because if you're doing longer cable, you're not gonna measure out that cable. It's too long. You wouldn't be able to do it. And so what you can do is you can go into Lightcore Cloud. You can go to your exports, and you can export the data from those water level sensors so that you can get your initial water level reading. So at the time that you took your reference measurements or your static water level readings, it will tell you this is what the sensor was reading at that moment in time. And so then at that point, you want to take your original static water level reading. So, again, if we're talking about groundwater, what was your water level reading in relation to ground at that moment in time? Maybe it was -1. It was a foot below ground surface. That would be your original static reading. And again, it could be from the top of the casing. It can be from the bottom of the well as a positive number. This is kind of your static it's almost your reference measurement. And so this equation right here will provide you your corrected offset. So it's your static water level reading, this right here, minus your initial water level sensor reading. Really, it's getting out that initial sensor reading and then providing you a corrected offset that you can then put in to your offset configuration. I mentioned it, and I'll mention it again, doing all these at the same time. Typically, you're going to come up with your offset. You're going to have all your wells laid out or all your different locations laid out with your different measurements that you took and the time intervals on Excel. At that point, excuse me, at that point, you can add your corrected offset right to that Excel file so that you can kind of dump all these in at one time. So following the offset, you can set up your sensor alarms. So in the very beginning, we talked about the station alarms, which was misconnections, battery low, sensor failure. It's something we set up in the registration portion of our station. You can change any of that right now. You can add different emails or text message or numbers for a text message. All that can be done. But now that we have sensors in place, we may want sensor custom alarms. And so you can add that right in the configuration section below your wireless sensors. It'll say alarms. You can click on that and then do ones that are more tied to your wireless sensors. So in this case, I have, an alarm name, high water level, the water level serial number. I select which sensor it is or which well it is. And then I want, if the water level is above 4 feet for 10 consecutive data points, send me a text message or an email or to whoever I want that to go to. And then I also want it to send me something when it clears as well. So you can set up, as many of these alarms as you want. It can be conditions above, below, in between. There's a lot of different options around that. And then you can also put in a note there so that it just tells you what that is. Also, now that everything's deployed, you can utilize our kind of user roles or user credentials feature. And so this really comes down to how you're managing this site and who's involved. But under the settings on the left-hand side, there is a users section, and that's how you're going to add, there's no cost associated with the software. So if you want colleagues or you want, someone from the public or someone from an agency to be involved in this and see this data or have some sort of access, which there's different levels of it, you can send them an invite through these user credentials. And so there's 3 different options for a user. It's a device admin, a device viewer, and an account admin. The device admin is more like a colleague that can, make configuration changes, run exports, and send them to people. They obviously have, the same thing as device viewer credentials where they can also see everything. So the device admin has all of those capabilities. The only ones they don't have is more what the account admin offers. The device viewer has access to data, but they can't edit anything. They can't create anything. They can't configure. So that's more for someone that, hands off, but you want them to be able to see things and play around, look at dashboards, stuff like that. And then you have your account admin who is able to, access the user roles, add users, maybe do the billing portion of it where they see the cell plan, what that cell plan is, when it needs to be paid. Again, no cost to the user. So, are you going to add a colleague? Are you going to add a client? Maybe there's just an interested party or public that you want to share information with. We actually have a public URL option with our dashboard. So you don't even have to add them. You don't have to send, an invite to this system. You can just create a dashboard, make a public URL out of it, and send that over to them. There's options here, and we talked about a little bit with creating multiple organizations, allowing different users into different organizations. Maybe you have multiple clients or you have multiple projects that you're working on and there's different people involved. So you can always, whatever you're tied to or however many organizations you're tied to, you'll always be able to kind of log into your personal login, hit the drop down and kind of click on which one you want to go to, which site you want to go to. After everything's set up, I like dashboards are a great option to kind of see your data. We have all these different widgets that you can utilize. We have a maps feature, kind of like the Google Maps. You can add, all these different graphing capabilities, line charts, bar charts, gauges. We have a latest measurements or latest conditions widget. So all of this can be added. This graph, it's a good example. Here's a line graph of my water levels with rain. There's a rain gauge on this site as well. Being utilized in a bar graph form, so you can see how kind of the hydrology is impacted by rainfall events. So the dashboards are a great option there to kind of customize what you want to see, and there's really no limit to that dashboard and what you can put on it. You can put, I think there might be a limit to how many sensors you can add to one graph, but it's going to be too much if you overlap too many anyways. A little more on dashboards, so you have those custom widgets, and I wanted to put some of these pictures up here. So here's your picture of your public URL. Once you're in the edit mode for your dashboard, on the top right, you'll see this share button. You click on that. I want to make this dashboard public. You might make a dashboard for yourself and your group, but you might make another one that's for the public and share it here. You can change what that link is and post it somewhere, and they can click on it. And they have kind of all the same capabilities of, I want to change it to see the last year or last month of data. It's somewhat interactive, but they can't change anything. They can't click anywhere else. It just gives them access to that dashboard. Over here just shows a little bit of, the options when it comes to the widgets as far as graphing goes. You can change it from a line, bar, scatter graph, or scatter plot. You have, your different independent access. You change the position on it. You can label it. You can color it. So it's pretty customizable here. And then lastly, on the bottom, one of the things I do want to say, and I'll say it again in the export section, if you're using a ton of wireless sensors, utilize these filter tools because you're going to be making changes. There's going to be sensors in here from now, sensors from prior to when you made changes. Use your date range. If you only want active stuff, punch a date range in that's only going to bring up the stuff that's currently logging. If you only care about water levels, use your measurement type filter to only see water levels. That will make it a lot easier to kind of navigate this. Your exports, so there's a couple capabilities with exports. You have, you can create exports kind of on the fly here. I mean, when you go into the exports or the data section, you'll see these options right here. What's good about the HOBOnet system is you can, or the exports section, is you can create an export and you can click on all those different wireless water level sensors that you have, put them on one export so that you don't have to recreate it and find them again and filter things down. You can create an export that that you're gonna do every month or every quarter or every year, and it saves down right in a queue so that the next time you go back, you don't have to select all your sensors again. You just change the dates, export it, and you're on your way. You also have the option to kind of schedule that export. So if you want it to be sent to yourself, as an Excel file every month, you can set that up. It'll shoot an email over to you, or you can dump it to an FTP site with the same scheduling tools. Again, use your filter tools. So if you're doing a large network, you have a lot of stations on this cloud software, ton of wireless water level sensors or sensors in general. Use those filter tools to kind of identify, what's a currently active wireless setup. I only want water level. It'll make it easier to kind of make your selections. And then lastly, we have API integration. So you can request a token right here and do that all right on your end, just if you want to dump your data into another software. And that is about it. I knew we went over. I actually did a little bit better than I thought. I encourage you all to take our information down. If you are interested in the HOBOnet wireless setup or system for your site and you want to design something out, I'd be happy to help you. My contact information is right here. I'm familiar with these sites. I'm familiar with deploying them. I'd be happy to jump on a Teams call, walk through your site, and take a look at what's best. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.